The first observation is that when you look at northwest and southeast, those are not separate. Those are nothing. Those are
They're
the
not,
non-RTO
yes.
areas.
So they're not
Yeah.
in a regional transmission operation. They're like independents, completely independent.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the maps are shaped the way they are because the members of the RTOs are the utilities, not
Mm-hmm.
the states.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at SPP and MISO in Missouri,
Mm-hmm.
that is the Ameren border. And I think it's Westar on the Missouri-Kansas side on the west side with
Mm-hmm.
SPP, and Ameren, which also goes into Illinois, is the blue part. The brown part is the cooperative
Oh, right here. Yes.
territories
But that's
in
PJM, right?
Missouri.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
PJM here
Well,
in
in
Illinois.
Missouri, the brown part is the cooperative territories, which aren't in anything. And then if
Okay,
you
right
look
here.
over at PJM,
Mm-hmm.
that color that, and it helps to have them contiguous. It's obvious that it's not a requirement. The part of Illinois, the city of Chicago is in that part.
Right.
Chicago is in PJM. Parts
Right.
of Indiana, there's a little
Yep.
bit of Michigan, that little corner,
Right.
um, is in PJM, and the rest is in my. That's because of where the utility service territories are.
Got it. Okay. And then those are the RTO networks here. We're talking about PJM, New York
Yes,
ISO, New England ISO here. Southeast, as you've
yes,
said, is an independent or sort of region here, not part of an
yeah,
RTO. You have your ERCOT, which is a
yes.
independent, non-regulated. So FERC has no jurisdiction over ERCOT. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's because FERC jurisdiction requires interstate transmission. The grid is interconnected. We have a Western interconnect and an Eastern interconnect
Yep.
that's balanced all the time. The Eastern interconnect has been described as the largest machine in the world. ERCOT has DC ties, but no AC ties. And in the 30s, they set it up that way so they would not have FERC jurisdiction over the
Interesting.
economic regulation of electricity. Now, of course, in Texas, they're still subject to EPA rules. There's other
Mm-hmm.
federal rules
Mm-hmm.
that impact electricity that they're
Mm-hmm.
still subject to, but the economic regulation of utilities within the ERCOT area, and you see Texas is also interesting, and it has some MISO, it has some SPP, and over there by El Paso, it actually has some Western interconnect.
Hmm.
El Paso's in the Western interconnect, and the rest of Texas is in the Eastern interconnect.
Okay, but just to sort of be complete here, that big blue splotch in the middle there, that's the MISO region. And then we
Yes,
have the SPP, that's the Southwest Power Pool, is that right?
yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
so then you're pulling through the Southwest Power Pool there. Then now that Southwest Brown block there, that is an
Yes.
RTO. Is that correct or
No,
no?
no, no, no. I should
No.
have. That was an error earlier.
Okay,
This
okay.
Northwest and the Southwest is not an RTO.
So these two, the
Yeah.
gray region and that brown region in the Southwest and the Northwest are not regulated either. And then CAISO, the California ISO, is regulated by FERC.
Yes.
Okay, so we have three
Yes.
regions, Southeast, Southwest, and Northwest, these big, huge
Yes.
blocks that are not regulated by FERC. And then we have a myriad of New England ISO, New York ISO,
Yeah.
PJM,
Well,
MISO, SPP, and Cal ISO that are all under FERC, but ERCOT is not.
yes. Now they're not regulated in the way that an RTO is. If you do a wholesale transaction in Idaho, you're still
Mm-hmm.
subject to FERC regulation. It's just not an RTO. That's another point that I should have made.
Is that because they're doing an interstate transaction?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
or even just any wholesale transaction. Well, there's some intrastate transactions that FERC doesn't, I think they might have authority to, but they choose not to. Well, but if it's interstate, it's still regulated. It's just not regulated under the RTO construct. And another important thing about the West is this is moving. There's some Colorado entities that have declared an intention to join SPP. There's things that are on a pathway to an RTO that's not yet a full RTO, including an energy imbalance market. The
And where's
California,
that happening? Where's that happening?
it's all over that Northwest and Southwest territory.
Okay, sort of a big
The
regional block in the West is really coming
Yes,
together.
and they're actively looking toward forming an RTO. The one that's announced is the one that's in Colorado.
Mhm.
And that there's some Colorado entities that will be joining SPP. The Southeast has largely resisted any
Mhm.
push towards doing this, but in
Okay.
the West, they're really embracing it. In the next 5 years, that map's probably going to change in the West. There'll probably be some SPP um,
So
over into the
SPP
Western
looks like it's going
Interconnect.
to push west into Colorado. And it sounds
Yes,
like there's maybe a Bonneville, Southwest, Northwest conglomeration that might come under one RTO jurisdiction. Is that right?
yes. Now there are governance issues with the California governor appoints the board of directors of CAISO.
Right.
The California legislature would have to change that.
Okay.
And that's probably a non-starter for full RTO, even though the California RTO runs the largest energy imbalance market in the West and has a
Mm-hmm.
day ahead market, which those are little milestones on the way to full RTO. Those are like components of the RTO services. So you see
Okay.
people in the West taking the early steps
Mm-hmm.
that when other people have taken them have eventually led to an RTO, but that's
Mm-hmm.
all in development. That's
And when you say in
Western
development,
RTO expansion.
could we expect 5 years, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years? How long does this new picture of RTO land take for you in your mind?
The SPP thing, I think they want to go live in 2024. So your
Oh,
map would change in 2024.
wow.
Um, this would in energy circles in the West, in regulator meetings and utility meetings.
Mhm.
This is one of the top conversations that's happening there right now. And in
Okay.
like 2 or 3 weeks ago, both CAISO and SPP had major announcements. SPP is working with a bunch of Northwest entities on regional resource adequacy.
Mm-hmm.
And then CAISO runs the larger of the two energy imbalance markets. SPP also runs one. And both of these things they're one component. If you look at an RTO and it does 6 or 8 things, well, these are one or two of the components that they're introducing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it's very much in flux in the West, and then the more recent the Christmas Eve, Christmas Day power outages pushed into the Southeast,
Yeah.
and although there's been a lot of resistance to the regional markets, more regional interconnection and planning, some will argue that that could have reduced the impact of those events. So we'll see if that starts a different kind of conversation in the Southeast,
Mm-hmm.
but that
Mm-hmm.
conversation is already moving forward. None of this stuff moves very quickly, but as quickly as it runs, that's already happening out West.